That chapter is closed. Stop chasing ghosts!
I gave my word safe, and I'm not done yet.
The state of Arizona declared my 8-year-old daughter legally dead 3 days ago. Emma is alive. Barely. She's lying in an ICU bed 2 miles from where I'm standing, fighting for every breath after the fire Patricia Drummond's contractor started. But according to official records, Emma Sullivan died in that blaze. And when your only child is legally dead, the state doesn't just take your property, they take everything. Your home, your parental rights, even your ability to make medical decisions for the daughter they claim doesn't exist. I'm a fire safety engineer. I've investigated over 300 fires in 15 years. I can read burn patterns the way most people read newspapers, and I know exactly how this fire started, who caused it, and why the board president filed a false report that turned my living daughter into a ghost. If you've ever watched someone in power destroy an innocent life to cover their own crimes, stay with me and hit subscribe now. My name is David Sullivan. I'm a widower, a father, and as of 72 hours ago, I'm legally childless in the eyes of the state, because a woman named Patricia Drummond decided my daughter's life was worth less than hiding her corruption. 8 years ago, my wife Sarah died giving birth to Emma. Premature delivery, catastrophic complications, a choice no one should have to make. Sarah's last words to me were, "Keep her safe." Emma survived, but her lungs didn't fully develop. Severe asthma, the kind that turns smoke, pollen, even bad air quality, into a life-threatening emergency. Her pulmonologist prescribed a medical-grade whole-house air filtration system, the kind with an exterior ventilation unit that looks like a small AC compressor. 6 months ago, Patricia Drummond decided that exterior unit was an aesthetic violation. Never mind the doctor's orders, never mind that it was literally keeping my daughter breathing. The board chair cared more about her precious curb appeal than my child's oxygen levels. I submitted a formal ADA accommodation request, medical documentation, pulmonologist letters, everything by the book. Patricia denied it, not because the request wasn't valid, but because, in her words, aesthetic standards supersede individual needs in a luxury community. That's when I should have known she was capable of anything. 3 months later, while I was at a job site investigating a warehouse fire, Patricia sent her contractor to my home, without warning, without permission. He cut power to Emma's air filtration system and started dismantling it. My daughter was home with a babysitter. Within 20 minutes, Emma couldn't breathe. The babysitter called 911. Emma spent 4 days in pediatric ICU. Tell, where are you watching from? I reinstalled the system the day she came home. What choice did I have? Let my daughter suffocate to satisfy an HOA president's aesthetic obsession. Patricia placed a $10,000 lien on my property, but liens weren't enough for the enforcer. Because here's what I didn't know. I'd noticed fire code violations in our community's storage facility during an evening walk a month before the attack on Emma's system. Blocked exits, non-compliant electrical, expired fire suppression equipment. I mentioned it professionally, casually, thinking Patricia would want to know. She dismissed it as nitpicking and told me to stop looking for problems. Those violations weren't accidental. Patricia had been hiring an unlicensed contractor who gave her kickbacks, thousands of dollars under the table, to do cosmetic work instead of safety repairs. She couldn't let anyone look too closely at building compliance, especially not a fire safety engineer. 2 weeks ago, that storage facility caught fire. Faulty electrical wiring by her unlicensed contractor. The fire spread fast. Blocked exits meant residents couldn't access fire extinguishers. Expired suppression system didn't activate. The flames reached my townhouse, Emma's bedroom. The window with the rainbow mural Sarah and I painted together, the one that says, "Mummy's promise, you're safe here." Emma was trapped in smoke. Robert Chen, our volunteer fire captain, pulled her out and saved her life. But her lungs, already fragile, took devastating damage. And while I was in the ER watching my daughter fight for her life, Patricia Drummond filed a false report with the fire marshal. She claimed my air filtration system caused the fire. She claimed Emma died from equipment I'd installed without approval. Both lies. Calculated, documented, criminal lies. But those lies triggered a bureaucratic nightmare. My equipment labeled as fire cause, Emma listed as fatality. My property classified as abandoned residence with no living dependents, seizure proceedings initiated automatically. 3 days ago, a social worker called me while I was holding Emma's hand in the ICU. She informed me the state was removing my parental authority because I'm listed as father to a deceased child, and the girl in this bed is classified as an unidentified minor. I have 72 hours before they transfer Emma to state custody and seize my home. Patricia Drummond thinks she's won. She thinks her lies buried the truth along with my daughter's legal existence. She's wrong. Because I know how fires start, and I know how empires burn. The phone call from Child Protective Services came at 2:47 in the afternoon, while I was sitting in Emma's ICU room, watching the ventilator push air into lungs that couldn't quite remember how to work on their own. Mr. Sullivan. According to state fire marshal records, Emma Sullivan was listed as deceased in the Lakeside Meadows fire incident. Can you explain why you're claiming parental rights to an unidentified minor? I couldn't speak for a full 10 seconds. The absurdity was suffocating. She's not unidentified. She's my daughter. She's alive. She's right here. Sir, we understand this is confusing, but our records show your records are wrong. Someone filed a false report. The social worker's voice softened with the kind of pity that makes you want to scream. Mr. Sullivan, grief can make us see things that aren't. I'm not grieving. I'm not delusional. My daughter is alive, and someone lied to cover up their own negligence. My hand tightened around Emma's fingers, careful not to disturb the IV line. Her name is Emma Catherine Sullivan, born February 14th, 8 years ago. Premature birth. Her mother Sarah died during delivery. Emma has severe asthma. She requires medical-grade air filtration. That's what started this whole nightmare. There was a pause, papers shuffling. I'm going to need you to come to our office tomorrow at 9 a.m. to sort this out. In the meantime, we're placing a hold on any medical decisions until we can verify. You're not placing a hold on anything. She's my daughter. Mr. Sullivan, until we resolve the discrepancy in the state records, we have to follow protocol. I'm sorry. She hung up. I sat there holding Emma's hand, listening to the ventilator's mechanical rhythm, and understood that Patricia Drummond hadn't just tried to steal my home. She'd tried to erase my daughter from existence. 6 months. That's how long the board chair had been systematically destroying my family. It started with a violation notice delivered on a Tuesday morning, tucked into my door like a death sentence wrapped in HOA letterhead. Notice of violation. Unauthorized exterior mechanical equipment visible from street. Fine, $750. Compliance required within 72 hours. I'd read it 3 times, certain there was some mistake. The unauthorized equipment was Emma's air filtration system, the one her pulmonologist had prescribed, the one that kept her out of the hospital. I had the medical documentation, the doctor's orders, everything. I filed an ADA accommodation request that same day, filled out every form, attached every medical record, submitted it through proper channels. I even included a letter from Emma's doctor explaining that without the filtration system, she'd require hospital-level care. The enforcer denied it in 48 hours. Aesthetic standards supersede individual accommodation requests in luxury communities. The equipment must be removed or relocated to a non-visible location. This decision is final. Non-visible location. Like I could just move medical equipment into a closet and expect it to filter the entire house. The woman clearly had no idea how ventilation systems worked. I appealed. I cited the Fair Housing Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, Arizona state law. I provided additional medical documentation. I even offered to paint the exterior unit to match the building, anything to make it less visible, without making it non-functional. Patricia Drummond doubled the fine to $1,500. That's when I started understanding who I was dealing with. This wasn't about rules or aesthetics. The clipboard queen had decided I was a problem that needed to be eliminated, and she was going to use every tool the HOA gave her to make it happen. The third denial came with a threat. Continued non-compliance will result in legal action, including liens and potential foreclosure proceedings. I should have fought harder then, should have hired a lawyer immediately, gone to the media, made noise, but I was a single father working 60-hour weeks, raising a medically fragile daughter, trying to hold together a life that had shattered the day my wife died. I thought if I just kept documenting everything, kept following proper channels, eventually someone reasonable would step in. I didn't know reasonable people don't survive on HOA boards when tyrants like Patricia Drummond are in charge. 3 months into the battle, I came home from investigating a commercial fire to find Emma on the living room floor, gasping for air, her lips tinged blue. The babysitter was hysterical. A man came. He said he was from the HOA. He cut the power and started taking apart the machine. I tried to stop him, but he said he had authorization. The enforcer had sent her contractor to forcibly remove my daughter's life support while I was at work. Emma spent 4 days in pediatric intensive care. The hospital bills alone were $14,000. And Patricia Drummond? She sent me another violation notice for the reinstalled system, this time with a $10,000 lien authorization attached. I reinstalled Emma's air filtration system the day she came home from the hospital. What else could I do? Watch my daughter suffocate to satisfy the board chair's aesthetic obsession. Let her spend the rest of her childhood in pediatric ICU, because Patricia Drummond cared more about curb appeal than a child's ability to breathe? The $10,000 lien hit my property 3 days later, but liens weren't enough for the tyrant. I'd made a critical mistake a month before the attack on Emma's system, a mistake I didn't even realize was a mistake until everything burned. I'd been walking through our community one evening, taking the long way home from the mailboxes, when I noticed the storage facility door prop. Professional habit made me glance inside. What I saw made my fire safety engineer instincts scream. Electrical panel with exposed wiring, fire extinguishers, 5 years past inspection, exit door blocked by stacked furniture, extension cords daisy-chained together like a bomb waiting for a timer. I mentioned it to Patricia at the next board meeting. Casual, professional, thinking she'd want to know. The storage facility has some code violations that should probably be addressed. Fire hazards, mostly. I'd be happy to do a formal assessment if we have contractors for that sort of thing, Mr. Sullivan. The enforcer's smile didn't reach her eyes. I'd appreciate it if you'd stop looking for problems where none exist. Some of us see this community as a home, not a job site to be inspected. I should have pushed harder, should have filed a formal complaint with the fire marshal right then, but I was already battling her over Emma's equipment, already drowning in violation notices and legal threats. I let it go. That storage facility burned 2 weeks ago. The fire started in that electrical panel I'd warned about, spread fast through improperly stored flammable materials, jumped to residential units, because the suppression system hadn't been maintained in years. My townhouse was one of 6 that sustained major damage. Emma's bedroom took the worst of it. Smoke inhalation, structural damage, the rainbow mural Sarah and I had painted reduced to charred streaks that looked like tears running down scorched walls. Emma almost died that night. Would have died, if not for Robert Chen. Robert appeared in the hospital parking garage just after midnight. 3 days after the fire, I'd gone down to my car to grab my phone charger. Was standing in the fluorescent-lit concrete tomb when I heard footsteps echoing behind me. David. His voice made me turn. We need to talk. Robert Chen was HOA vice president, volunteer fire captain, and the man who'd pulled my daughter from a smoke-filled bedroom. He stood 10 feet away, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, looking like a man being eaten alive by his own conscience. Robert, if you're here to defend, I'm not. He took 2 steps closer, then stopped. His jaw worked like he was trying to force words through concrete. I'm here because I can't sleep. Because every time I close my eyes I see Emma's face in that bedroom window, and I see my own daughter, because I should have stopped this years ago. His hands came out of his pockets, and they were shaking, not a little. Full tremors, like a man with hypothermia. You knew, I said quietly, about the violations. I documented 18 months of safety concerns. His voice cracked. Fire code violations, unlicensed contractor work, Patricia's kickback scheme, all of it. I'm a commercial insurance underwriter, David. I know what proper building compliance looks like. I know what happens when people cut corners on fire safety. And I watched the clipboard queen ignore every warning, bury every concern, threaten anyone who asked questions. He pulled a flash drive from his pocket with shaking fingers. 5 years of board meeting recordings. Every safety issue I raised that Patricia had amended out of the official minutes. Every kickback payment I tracked from that contractor to her personal account. Every lie she told to keep anyone from looking too closely at what she was doing. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid. The words came out like broken glass. Patricia threatened to destroy my accounting business if I pushed back. Said she'd make sure every client knew about a lawsuit from 6 years ago settled. No wrongdoing, but she'd twist it. I have a wife, a daughter Emma's age, a small business that's my family's entire income. So I stayed quiet, documented everything like a good little coward, told myself I was building a case for someday, and let that woman turn our community into a death trap. Robert's eyes were wet. Your daughter almost died because I chose my business over her safety. The Kowalskis' oxygen equipment, the Martinez girl's wheelchair ramp, all of it. Patricia's been terrorizing this community for years, and I just watched. He pressed the flash drive into my palm. I can't undo what I didn't do, but I can give you the ammunition to take her down. Everything you need is on there. Use it. Robert Chen left the parking garage like a man fleeing a crime scene, his confession hanging in the air between us like smoke. I stood there holding his flash drive, feeling its weight, not the physical ounce of plastic and silicon, but the weight of 5 years of documented cowardice and corruption. I didn't go back up to Emma's room right away. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just breathing, trying to process that someone had finally validated what I'd been screaming into the void for 6 months. Patricia Drummond was a criminal, and everyone who mattered had known it all along. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Sullivan. This is Deputy Marshal Tom Breslin with the County Sheriff's Office. I'm calling regarding the property seizure order for 847 Lakeside Meadows Drive, Unit C. The world tilted sideways. Seizure order? Yes, sir. Due to the fire damage and the circumstances surrounding the incident, the HOA has filed an emergency petition claiming the unit is a public safety hazard requiring immediate association control. You have 24 hours to remove all personal belongings before we execute the order. That's my home. My daughter is in the ICU. You can't. Sir, I understand this is difficult, but the order is valid. The HOA provided documentation showing you're listed as having no living dependents, which removes the family housing protections under Arizona law. Without those protections, the association has the right to, I have a living daughter. She's 8 years old. She's alive. There was a pause, papers shuffling. According to the fire marshal's report, Emma Sullivan was listed as deceased in the incident. If that's in error, you'll need to file a correction with the state, but that process takes 30 to 60 days minimum. The seizure happens tomorrow regardless. He hung up, just like the social worker, just like everyone in this bureaucratic nightmare that the board chair had engineered with a single false report. I drove back to my fire-damaged townhouse at dawn, the sunrise painting Phoenix in colours that felt obscene, gold and pink and orange, like the world was celebrating while my life burned down. The unit looked worse in daylight. Smoke damage streaked the exterior walls like claw marks. Emma's bedroom window, the one with Sarah's rainbow mural, was boarded up with plywood, the painted promise hidden behind industrial lumber. Water damage from the fire department's hoses had created dark stains that spread across the stucco like bruises. I let myself in with keys that felt foreign in my hand, like I was breaking into someone else's tragedy. Inside was devastation. The acrid smell of smoke clung to everything. Furniture, walls, the carpet that squelched with water damage under my feet. Emma's bedroom was the worst. The beautiful rainbow Sarah had painted, the words "Mummy's promise, you're safe here," that had comforted our daughter through 1,000 nightmares, all of it reduced to charred streaks and water-stained plaster. I started packing Emma's things. Stuffed animals that smelled like smoke, books with singed pages, the framed photo of Sarah holding newborn Emma in the NICU, the glass cracked but the image intact, my wife's face exhausted and radiant and dying, though neither of us knew it yet. That's when I heard the voices outside. Patricia Drummond stood in my driveway with her contractor, the same man who'd cut power to Emma's air filtration system 3 months ago, and a sheriff's deputy I didn't recognize. The enforcer wore cream-colored linen that probably cost more than my mortgage payment, not a hair out of place, inspecting my destroyed home like she was evaluating real estate. The structural damage is extensive, she was saying to the contractor, her voice carrying through my broken window. I think complete demolition and rebuild is the most cost-effective option. You can start as soon as the seizure is finalized. The contractor nodded, making notes on a tablet. I can have a crew here by end of week. Demo should take 4 or 5 days tops. Then we're looking at 8 weeks for rebuild, maybe 10 if permits. Permits won't be an issue. The clipboard queen's smile was sharp enough to cut. I have excellent relationships with the county inspector's office. I walked outside carrying a box of Emma's things, and Patricia turned to look at me. For just a second, something flickered across her face. Not guilt, not sympathy, but satisfaction. The expression of someone watching their plan unfold exactly as designed. David. She said my name like we were old friends. Such a tragedy, all of this. If only you'd followed the rules from the beginning, none of this would have happened. Your daughter would still be. She paused, her head tilting with manufactured sympathy. Well, according to the state, she's not, is she? The contractor shifted uncomfortably. Even the deputy looked away. You filed a false report, I said quietly. You told the fire marshal my equipment caused the fire. You told them Emma died. I reported what I observed, Patricia replied smoothly. The fire spread from your unit. Your unauthorized modifications created a hazard. As for your daughter's status, I simply relayed information provided to me by emergency responders. If there's been some clerical error, I'm sure it will be corrected eventually. She turned back to the contractor. Let's walk the interior. I want to see if any of the original structure is salvageable before we commit to full demolition. I watched the tyrant walk into my home like she owned it, which in 24 hours she legally would. The contractor followed. The deputy stayed outside, and I stood in my driveway holding a box of my daughter's smoke-damaged belongings, shaking with rage I couldn't afford to express. They stayed inside for 15 minutes. When Patricia emerged, she had a phone out, already scheduling the demolition like my family's life was just another project to be managed and erased. I loaded Emma's things into my car and drove to the cheapest hotel I could find near the hospital. a Holiday Inn Express that smelled like industrial cleaner and defeat. I hauled everything up to a second-floor room with a view of the parking lot and a TV bolted to the dresser. Then I did what I should have done 6 months ago. I investigated. It was 3 a.m. when I finally opened my laptop, surrounded by Emma's stuffed animals and the ghosts of better times. Sleep was impossible anyway. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Patricia's satisfied smile, heard her voice saying, "She's not, is she?" Like my daughter's legal death was a minor inconvenience instead of a bureaucratic execution. I pulled up the photos I'd taken of the storage facility 3 weeks before the fire. Professional habit. I photographed code violations automatically, even when I wasn't planning to report them. The images showed everything I'd warned the board chair about: exposed electrical panel, improper wiring, blocked exits, expired fire suppression equipment. Then I opened the fire marshal's public report on the Lakeside Meadows fire. The point of origin was listed as Residential Unit C, 847 Lakeside Meadows Drive, my unit. The report claimed the fire started due to unauthorized HVAC modifications creating electrical hazard and spread from there to the storage facility and other units. I stared at those words until they stopped making sense. 15 years as a fire safety engineer, hundreds of investigations, certified arson investigator. I could read burn patterns in my sleep, and I knew with absolute professional certainty that this report was a lie. I pulled up the post-fire scene photos the fire marshal's office had released to the public record. Standard protocol, they always released basic scene documentation after the investigation closed. I zoomed in on the burn patterns, the char depth, the directional indicators that told the story of how flame and heat had moved through the structures. The V pattern on the storage facility wall showed clear point of origin, electrical panel, exactly where I'd photographed the violations. The char depth was deepest there, fading as it spread outward, classic electrical fire progression. The patterns on my unit's exterior wall told a completely different story. The burning was heaviest on the side facing the storage facility. The char patterns showed heat and flame moving from the storage facility to my unit, not the other way around. My bedroom window, Emma's window, had been broken by heat exposure from external fire, not internal combustion. Anyone with basic fire investigation training could read these patterns. The fire had started in the storage facility, electrical panel, and spread to residential units, including mine. The enforcer's report was a complete fabrication. I pulled up the detailed fire marshal documentation, the stuff that wasn't in the public summary. The report was signed by Senior Fire Marshal Janet Rodriguez, Arizona Fire Marshal's Office. Janet Rodriguez. I knew that name, knew it the way you know your own heartbeat. Janet had been my supervisor for 6 years before I went into private consulting. We'd investigated over 100 fires together. She taught me half of what I knew about reading burn patterns. Janet was meticulous, ethical, and absolutely incapable of filing a false report. I checked the report date, filed 3 days after the fire. Then I pulled up the fire marshal's office duty roster, public record, available online. Janet Rodriguez had been on scheduled vacation that entire week, attending a training conference in San Diego. She couldn't have investigated this fire. She wasn't even in the state. Someone had filed a false report using her name, her credentials, her signature, and that someone had used Patricia Drummond's initial incident statement as the basis for every lie in the document. My hands started shaking again, but this time it wasn't rage. It was something colder, more focused. I'd spent 6 months being gaslit, terrorized, and systematically destroyed by the board chair. I'd watched my daughter nearly die because Patricia ignored safety violations I'd warned her about. I'd lost my home, my daughter's legal existence, everything that mattered, and now I had proof that the entire catastrophe was built on a foundation of criminal fraud. I picked up my phone. It was 4:17 a.m., but I didn't care. Janet answered on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep. "David, what's wrong?" "Janet, I need you to pull the Lakeside Meadows fire investigation file, the one with your name on it from 2 weeks ago." There was a pause. "David, I don't know what you're talking about. I've been in San Diego for—" "I know. That's the problem. Someone filed a report using your credentials, and that false report just destroyed my life." I heard her sit up, the rustle of sheets, the sudden alertness of someone who understands exactly what they're hearing. "Send me everything," she said. "Right now. Photos, reports, everything you have. If someone used my name to file false fire documentation, that's not just fraud, David. That's a criminal offense. And if it caused what you're implying—" Her voice hardened into something I remembered from our years working together, the sound of Janet Rodriguez going to war. "We're fixing this. Today." I sent Janet everything. Photos, reports, documentation, the timeline of Patricia's 6-month campaign of terror. I sent her Robert Chen's contact information and warned her about the flash drive full of board meeting recordings. I sent her the medical documentation proving Emma was alive despite the state declaring her dead. Then I sat in that hotel room surrounded by stuffed animals and waited for dawn, watching the parking lot lights fade as the sun crept over Phoenix. My phone rang at 6:42 a.m. Janet, her voice tight with controlled fury. "David, I've reviewed the burn pattern analysis. You're right. The fire originated in the storage facility electrical system and spread to residential units. The report filed under my name is fraudulent." She paused, and I could hear papers rustling. "I'm bringing this to my supervisor immediately. We're opening a criminal investigation for filing a false fire report. But David, there's something else you need to understand." "What?" "The false report isn't just fraud. It's the trigger for everything else that happened to you. Your equipment being classified as the fire cause, Emma being listed as deceased, your property being seized, all of it flows from that initial false statement. Whoever filed this report didn't just lie about fire origin. They created a cascading bureaucratic nightmare designed to destroy you." "Patricia Drummond filed the initial incident statement," I said. "The report was based on her claims. Then she's facing serious criminal charges. Filing a false fire report is a felony in Arizona. If that false report led to your daughter being incorrectly listed as deceased and your property being seized," Janet's voice carried the weight of 15 years investigating fires and the people who started them. "David, this goes beyond HOA overreach. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, filing false instruments, potentially even attempted theft through fraudulent seizure. I'm contacting the county attorney's office today." Relief hit me like a physical blow. Someone with authority finally believed me. Someone who mattered was taking action. How long before Emma's death record is corrected? "I'm filing an emergency correction order this morning. With fire marshal authority behind it, we can expedite the process. You should have her legal status restored within 48 hours instead of 60 days. And David?" Her voice softened slightly. I'm sorry someone used my name to do this to your family. I'm sorry you've been fighting this alone, but you're not alone anymore." She hung up. I sat there holding my phone, feeling something I hadn't felt in 6 months. Hope. Then my phone rang again. Different number. My attorney. "David, we have a problem. A bad one." The hope evaporated. "Emma's medical bills have exceeded your insurance coverage cap. The hospital is threatening to transfer her to county care within 48 hours because," he stopped, cleared his throat. "Because she's listed as deceased, the insurance company suspended coverage pending clarification of beneficiary status. They're claiming they can't pay out benefits for someone who's officially dead, but she's alive, she's in the ICU right now." "I know, but the insurance company operates on official records, and the official record says Emma Sullivan died in a fire 2 weeks ago. Until that's corrected, they won't process claims. And without coverage, the hospital can't keep her in their ICU. They're required to transfer uninsured patients to county care, which means foster system medical custody." The words tasted like ash. "They'll put my daughter in state custody, because Patricia Drummond's lies convinced everyone she doesn't exist. I'm filing emergency motions, but David, these things take time, even with the fire marshal intervening. We're looking at days, maybe a week before all the bureaucratic dominoes fall back into place. The hospital wants her transferred by Friday. Today was Wednesday. I hung up and drove straight to the hospital, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. Emma was in her room, still on the ventilator, still fighting for every breath. I sat beside her bed and took her hand carefully, avoiding the IV lines and monitoring equipment. "Hey, sweetheart," I whispered. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened slightly. The sedation kept her groggy, but she was there, alive, real. "My daughter, who the state had declared didn't exist. I made a promise to your mum," I said quietly. "The day you were born, when she was dying, she made me promise to keep you safe, to protect you. And baby, I failed. I let that woman hurt you. I let her nearly kill you. I let her lies take away your name, your existence, everything." Tears burned my eyes. Emma's fingers tightened weakly around mine. "But I'm not failing anymore. The fire marshal is investigating. The lies are unraveling. And Emma," I leaned closer, my voice dropping to barely audible, "I'm going to make sure Patricia Drummond pays for every single thing she's done to us, to you, to every family she's terrorized. I promise you that." Emma's eyes closed again, but her hand stayed wrapped around my finger. Sarah's last words echoed in my mind. "Keep her safe." I was about to keep that promise in a way Patricia Drummond never saw coming. Robert Chen called me at noon while I was still sitting beside Emma's bed, watching monitors measure my daughter's fragile existence in numbers and graphs. "David, We need to meet. Now. I have something you need to see before it's too late. I can't leave Emma. The hospital is threatening to transfer her to state custody on Friday, and this is about stopping that from happening. Trust me." His voice carried an urgency I hadn't heard in the parking garage confession. "There's a coffee shop on Camelback, 2 blocks east of the hospital. The Daily Grind. I'll be in the back corner. 30 minutes. He hung up before I could argue. I kissed Emma's forehead, promised her I'd be back soon, and found myself driving to meet the man who'd admitted he'd watched my daughter nearly die because he was too afraid to stop the board chair. Robert was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with his back to the wall like a man expecting threats from every direction. In front of him sat a folder thick enough to be a manuscript. His hands shook as he slid it across the table toward me. "I couldn't sleep," he said without preamble. "After I gave you that flash drive, I kept thinking about everything I'd documented, everything I'd seen Patricia do over 5 years, and I realized the recordings weren't enough, so I went deeper." I opened the folder. Inside were printed bank statements, contractor invoices, HOA financial records, email chains, and what looked like official county incorporation documents. "I'm a commercial insurance underwriter," Robert continued, his voice low and urgent. 2 years ago, I was reviewing our HOA's liability coverage and noticed something odd in the incorporation paperwork. It looked outdated, so I checked county records. He tapped the documents. "David, our HOA was never properly re-registered after Arizona changed the HOA laws in 2015. The state required all HOAs to reincorporate with updated financial transparency and accountability measures. Grace period ended in 2017. I looked up from the papers. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Lakeside Meadows HOA hasn't legally existed as an enforcement entity since 2017. Robert's hands were still shaking, but his voice was steady now. The voice of a man unburdening himself of years of guilty knowledge. Every fine Patricia levied, every lien she placed, every rule she enforced for the past 7 years, none of it had legal standing. She's been operating a ghost organization with no actual authority. The implications hit me like a physical blow. The $10,000 lien on my property, illegal, void. She had no legal standing to place it." Robert pulled out more documents. The violation notices, the forced removal of Emma's equipment, the property seizure order, all of it is legally meaningless because the entity issuing those orders doesn't exist in the eyes of the law. "Why didn't you?" I confronted her. Robert's voice cracked. 2 years ago, I brought this to Patricia privately, showed her the incorporation gap, explained we needed to re-register immediately. You know what she did?" He pulled out his phone, hands trembling so badly he almost dropped it. He played an audio recording. Patricia's voice came through the speaker, cold and sharp. "Robert, do you remember that lawsuit your accounting firm settled 6 years ago? The one where you allegedly made errors that cost a client $50,000? No admission of wrongdoing, but settled nonetheless. Interesting how that might look to your current clients if someone brought it to their attention. If someone suggested you're incompetent with financial matters, how long do you think your little business would survive that kind of scrutiny?" Robert's voice on the recording, quieter. "Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality. The HOA incorporation issue is a paperwork technicality that benefits no one to expose. We'd face years of legal challenges, homeowners would sue to recover fines, our property values would tank when word got out. You have a wife, a daughter, a business. I suggest you consider what's more important, some bureaucratic filing error, or protecting what you've built." The recording ended. Robert looked at me with haunted eyes. "I chose my business over everyone's safety. I let the enforcer operate without legal authority for 2 years because I was terrified of losing my livelihood, and in that time, she terrorized dozens of families, ignored code violations, took kickbacks from unlicensed contractors, and nearly killed your daughter." He pushed another stack of papers across the table. "These are the contractor payment records. Patricia received $32,000 in kickbacks over 4 years from that unlicensed contractor. I tracked every payment through a shell company called Desert Property Consulting. It's registered to her sister's address, but the deposits correlate exactly with dates the contractor did work for the HOA. That's embezzlement. It's worse than that." Robert pulled out the final documents. The contractor's name is Miguel Santos. His electrical license expired in 2019. He's been doing electrical work throughout our community for 4 years without proper licensing. The storage facility where the fire started, Santos did the electrical upgrades last year. Patricia approved the work knowing he wasn't licensed because he charged half the rate of legitimate contractors and kicked back 20%. I stared at the evidence spread across the coffee shop table. Years of documented corruption, fraud, and criminal negligence. compiled by a man who'd chosen silence until his conscience finally broke. Why are you giving me this now? Because Emma's running out of time. Because the clipboard queen is about to seize your property, using authority she doesn't legally have. Because I'm done being the coward who documented crimes instead of stopping them. Robert's voice strengthened. I'll testify to all of it. The incorporation gap, the kickbacks, the threats, everything. I'll lose my position on the board, probably face lawsuits for not speaking up sooner, but I'll do it. For Emma. For every family Patricia destroyed while I watched. He stood up, leaving the folder and all his guilty secrets on the table between us. End her, David. Use everything I've given you, and end her before she destroys anyone else. I spent the rest of Wednesday afternoon in that hotel room, building a case the way I'd build a fire investigation. Methodical, documented, irrefutable. The difference was that this time, I wasn't investigating what burned. I was preparing to burn someone's entire world to ashes. I laid out everything on the bed like evidence at a crime scene. Robert's incorporation documents showing the HOA had operated without legal authority since 2017. His financial records proving Patricia received $32,000 in contractor kickbacks. Janet's burn pattern analysis confirming the fire started in the storage facility, not my unit. The contractor licensing database showing Miguel Santos's expired credentials. The fraudulent fire report filed under Janet's name while she was in San Diego. Every piece of evidence told the same story. The board chair had built an empire of corruption on a foundation that legally didn't exist, and when I'd threatened to expose it, even accidentally, she tried to erase me and my daughter from existence. But evidence alone wasn't enough. I needed strategy. Multiple fronts of attack, each one reinforcing the others, creating a web Patricia couldn't escape. I opened my laptop and started building the assault. Front 1. Fire Marshal Criminal Investigation. Janet was already moving on this. The false fire report filed under her credentials elevated this beyond civil HOA dispute into criminal fraud territory. I documented everything. The timeline of Patricia's initial false statement, the burn patterns proving she lied, the cascading consequences that followed. Janet would present this to the county attorney's office, triggering a formal investigation. Front 2. HOA legal standing. Robert's incorporation documents were gold. I hired an attorney specializing in Arizona HOA law, spent money I couldn't afford on a consultation that lasted 2 hours. Her assessment was devastating to the enforcer. If the HOA hasn't been properly registered since 2017, every enforcement action taken during that period is legally void. Your lien is unenforceable. The violation notices have no legal weight. The property seizure order has no authority behind it. You can file to have all of it vacated immediately. I filed emergency motions that afternoon. Vacate the property seizure, void the $10,000 lien, dismiss all violation notices. Each motion cited the incorporation gap and argued the HOA lacked legal standing to take any enforcement action. Front 3. Contractor fraud and embezzlement. Miguel Santos's expired license was a matter of public record. I cross-referenced every permit filed for work at Lakeside Meadows over the past 4 years. Santos's name appeared on 17 permits, all electrical work, all done without valid licensing. That was contractor fraud on a massive scale. The kickback payments were trickier. Robert had tracked them through the shell company, but I needed more. I pulled HOA financial statements from the past 4 years, also public record for homeowners, and compared them to the contractor invoices Robert had provided. The numbers told a clear story. The HOA paid Santos $160,000 for various projects. Santos kicked back $32,000 to Desert Property Consulting. Patricia was embezzling HOA funds through contractor kickbacks. I filed formal complaints with the Arizona Registrar of Contractors and the State Attorney General's Office for Financial Crimes. Front 4. Fair Housing Act violations. This one was federal. The Fair Housing Act requires HOAs to provide reasonable accommodations for disabilities and medical conditions. Patricia's denial of Emma's medically necessary air filtration system wasn't just cruel, it was a federal crime. Her forced removal of the equipment while Emma was home was even worse.
I filed a formal complaint with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, detailed timeline, medical documentation, the hospitalization that resulted from the enforcer's actions. HUD took fair housing violations seriously, especially ones involving children with documented medical needs. Front 5. Insurance fraud. Robert's documentation showed Patricia had misrepresented the community's fire safety compliance to the insurance carrier to secure lower premiums. She'd hidden code violations, failed to disclose the unlicensed contractor work, and lied about safety equipment maintenance. That was textbook insurance fraud, a felony in Arizona. I drafted a complaint to the State Insurance Fraud Bureau with copies of every piece of evidence. By sunset, I'd filed complaints with 6 different agencies: State Fire Marshal, County Attorney, State Contractor Board, Attorney General, HUD, and Insurance Fraud Bureau. Each complaint was thorough, documented, and devastating. Each one alone could destroy the clipboard queen's life. Together, they were a coordinated demolition. But I wasn't done. I pulled up the contact information for every family Robert had identified as Patricia's previous victims. The Kowalskis with their medical oxygen equipment, the Martinez family with the wheelchair ramp, the Hendersons with their autistic son's sensory accommodations. 3 more families Robert had mentioned in his notes, all terrorized, all forced to pay illegal fines, all living under the tyrant's thumb. I started making calls. Mrs. Kowalski, my name is David Sullivan. I'm a homeowner at Lakeside Meadows. I understand you had issues with the HOA regarding your medical equipment. One by one, I explained what I'd discovered. The HOA had no legal authority. Every fine was void. Every threat was meaningless. And the woman who'd terrorized them for years was about to face criminal charges for fraud, embezzlement, and filing false reports. I'm organizing testimony for when this goes public, I told each family. I need people willing to document what Patricia did, how she targeted families with medical needs, disabled children, elderly residents. I need witnesses who will stand up and say, "This stops now." By midnight, I had 9 families committed to testifying. 9 families ready to expose years of systematic abuse. My phone rang at 12:47 a.m. Janet Rodriguez. David, the county attorney's office is opening a formal criminal investigation into Patricia Drummond. We're looking at charges of filing a false fire report, insurance fraud, and potentially conspiracy to commit fraud given the cascading effects. They want to interview you tomorrow morning. I'll be there. One more thing. Janet's voice carried grim satisfaction. We subpoenaed Patricia's communications with Miguel Santos, the unlicensed contractor. The emails are damning. She knew he wasn't licensed and hired him anyway because he was cheaper and didn't ask questions. That's conspiracy to commit contractor fraud. We've got her, David. I hung up and looked at my laptop screen, at the coordinated assault I'd built across multiple agencies and jurisdictions. The enforcer thought she'd destroyed me, thought her lies had buried the truth along with my daughter's legal existence. She was about to learn what happens when you try to erase a fire safety engineer who knows how to read burn patterns and how to start controlled burns of his own. Thursday morning, I gave my statement to the county attorney's office in a conference room that smelled like coffee and justice delayed. 2 prosecutors, Janet Rodriguez, and a recording device that captured every detail of Patricia's 6-month campaign to destroy my family. They asked questions for 3 hours. I answered with the precision of someone who'd investigated hundreds of fires, documented every violation, kept every email. When I finished, the lead prosecutor, a woman named Sarah Chen, who looked like she'd forgotten what sleep was, leaned back in her chair. Mr. Sullivan, in 20 years prosecuting fraud cases, I've never seen someone build this comprehensive a paper trail while being actively victimized. You've essentially done our job for us. I'm a fire safety engineer, I said. Documentation is what I do. Well, your documentation just gave us a slam dunk case for multiple felonies. She tapped the folder in front of her. Filing false fire reports, contractor fraud, embezzlement, insurance fraud, and given the cascading consequences of her false statements, we're looking at conspiracy charges. Ms. Drummond is facing serious prison time. I left that meeting and drove straight to Frank Kowalski's house, the first family on my list of Patricia's victims. Frank answered the door with the cautious expression of a man who'd learned not to trust easily. Mr. Sullivan, you said you had information about the HOA? I spent 40 minutes explaining everything. The incorporation gap that voided 7 years of enforcement actions, the contractor kickbacks, the false fire report, the criminal investigations now underway. Frank's wife, Martha, joined us halfway through, and by the end, she was crying. We paid that woman $18,000 in fines over 3 years, Martha said, her voice shaking. For our grandson's basketball hoop, for the oxygen equipment my husband needs for his COPD, for parking violations that didn't exist. $18,000 to a woman who had no legal right to fine us for anything. You can sue to recover every dollar, I said. The HOA operated without legal standing. Those fines were theft. Frank looked at his wife, then back at me. What do you need from us? Testimony. Documentation. Every violation notice, every fine, every threat the board chair made. I'm building a coalition of families she terrorized. When this goes public, and it will soon, I need people willing to stand up and say this ends now. They agreed immediately. I gave them the same pitch at 7 more houses that afternoon. Rosa Martinez, the single mother whose wheelchair ramp Patricia had fought for 2 years. The Henderson family, whose autistic son's sensory equipment the enforcer called eyesores. Each family had their own horror story. Each one had paid illegal fines, suffered harassment, lived in fear of the clipboard queen's next violation notice. By Thursday evening, I had 12 families committed to testifying, each with documentation spanning years of abuse. But I needed more than testimony. I needed visibility. I needed to make sure that when the criminal charges came down, the public understood this wasn't just about HOA overreach. It was about systematic corruption that nearly killed a child. I contacted a reporter named Lisa Chen from the Arizona Republic who'd covered HOA abuse stories before. I gave her everything off the record: the false fire report, the incorporation gap, the contractor fraud, Emma's near death, the bureaucratic nightmare of my daughter being declared legally dead while fighting for her life in an ICU. "This is explosive," Lisa said when I finished. "HOA president commits fraud, embezzles funds, files false fire reports, nearly kills a child, then tries to seize the father's property while the daughter's legally declared dead. David, this is front-page material. When can I run it?" "Hold it until after the emergency HOA meeting next Tuesday," I said. "I want Patricia there, in public, when everything comes down. I want the community to see her face when the county attorney serves her." "You're sure she'll show up?" "She doesn't know what's coming," I said. "As far as the tyrant knows, she's won. I'm homeless. My daughter's legally dead. My property's being seized. She thinks I'm beaten. She'll show up to the meeting to celebrate demolishing my unit and moving on to her next victim." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "You're setting a trap." "I'm building a controlled burn," I corrected. "I'm a fire safety engineer. It's what I do." Friday morning brought the news I'd been desperately waiting for. Janet called at 6 a.m. "David, the emergency correction order went through. Emma's death record has been officially voided. As of 1 hour ago, your daughter legally exists again. I'm sending the documentation to your insurance company and the hospital immediately. They'll reinstate her coverage and drop the state custody transfer." I drove to the hospital and showed the paperwork to Emma's care team. Watched them update her records in real time, changing unidentified minor back to Emma Sullivan, age 8. Watched my daughter's legal existence restore with keystrokes and official stamps. "Daddy?" Emma's voice was small, weak, but present. The ventilator had been removed that morning, replaced with oxygen cannula. "Are they still trying to take me away?" "No, baby." I held her hand carefully, feeling the warmth of living fingers around mine. "Nobody's taking you anywhere. You're mine. You're real. You exist. What about our house?" "That's being fixed too." I smiled, though tears burned my eyes. "The bad people who tried to hurt us? They're going to lose everything, sweetheart. I promise you that." Emma closed her eyes, exhausted from the effort of speaking, but she squeezed my hand before drifting back to sleep. I spent the rest of Friday coordinating the final pieces. My attorney filed the motions to vacate the property seizure, citing the HOA's lack of legal standing. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for Tuesday at 7 p.m., supposedly to finalize my unit's demolition and special assessment to cover costs. Patricia had no idea she was walking into an ambush. By Saturday, every piece was in position. Multiple criminal investigations underway, 12 families ready to testify, a reporter with the full story waiting to publish. Emergency motions filed to void every action the board chair had taken. The controlled burn was ready to ignite. All I had to do was wait for Tuesday, when the enforcer would walk into a room full of the families she'd destroyed and discover that sometimes the victim knows how to fight back. Tuesday arrived with the kind of Arizona heat that makes everything feel like it's waiting to combust. I spent the day at the hospital with Emma, watching her breathe without machines for the first time in 2 weeks, preparing myself for what was coming. "You're going to the meeting tonight," Emma said. Not a question. She knew. "I have to, sweetheart." "Are you going to make her pay?" My 8-year-old daughter's eyes held an understanding no child should have, the knowledge that adults can be monsters, that justice sometimes requires fighting back. "Yes." "Good." Emma squeezed my hand. "Mommy would want you to protect people. That's what she always said firefighters do, right? They protect people from fires." "That's right." "So protect them from her?" Emma's voice was stronger than it had been in days. She's worse than fire, Daddy. Fire doesn't pretend to be helping you while it burns you alive. I arrived at the Lakeside Meadows Community Center at 6:30, half an hour before the meeting. The room was already filling. Unprecedented attendance for an emergency session supposedly about demolition permits and special assessments. The families I'd contacted sat scattered throughout the space, not clustering together, making it look like organic community concern rather than organized opposition. Frank Kowalski in the third row with his wife, Rosa Martinez near the back with her daughter, the Hendersons along the side wall. 12 families total, each carrying folders of documentation, each ready to speak about years of abuse. Janet Rodriguez sat in the far corner, technically off duty, but present as a witness. Next to her sat Deputy County Attorney Sarah Chen, her presence unofficial but deliberate. Lisa Chen from the Arizona Republic positioned herself near the door with a camera and notepad. Robert Chen was already at the board table, looking like a man awaiting execution, a thick folder in front of him that I knew contained every piece of evidence we'd discussed. At exactly 7 p.m., Patricia Drummond swept into the room like she was entering her throne room. The enforcer wore navy blue today. Professional, authoritative, perfectly tailored. Her hair was styled to within an inch of its life, makeup flawless, the picture of someone completely in control. She surveyed the packed room with visible irritation, then something that might have been suspicion flickering across her face when she noticed the crowd size. But she recovered quickly, settling into the board president's chair with the confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences. Good evening. This is an emergency board session to address the fire-damaged property at 847 Lakeside Meadows Drive, Unit C. Her voice carried that familiar, imperious tone. We have contractor bids for demolition and rebuilding, along with a special assessment proposal to... Point of order. Robert Chen's voice cut across hers, shaking but audible. Before we discuss any property actions, I need to address a critical legal issue the board must consider. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Robert, this isn't the time for the HOA's incorporation status. He opened his folder, hands trembling as he pulled out documents. Specifically, the fact that Lakeside Meadows HOA has not been properly registered with Maricopa County since 2017, following Arizona's HOA law changes. We have operated without legal standing for 6 years. The room went silent. Patricia's face drained of color for just a second before rage flooded back in. That's absurd. I have the county records. Robert stood, his voice gaining strength. I discovered this 2 years ago and brought it to your attention privately, Patricia. You threatened to destroy my business if I disclosed it publicly. But I can't stay silent anymore. Not after what happened to David Sullivan's daughter. Not after watching you terrorize this community using authority you never legally possessed. He turned to face the room. Every fine levied by this board since 2017 is legally void. Every lien, every violation notice, every enforcement action, all of it was done by an entity that doesn't exist in the eyes of Arizona law. The room erupted, homeowners shouting questions, Patricia slamming her gavel, board members looking shell-shocked. I stood up slowly, laptop in hand. May I address the board? Patricia's eyes found mine across the room, and for the first time, I saw fear break through her imperious mask. She knew. Somehow, in that moment, she knew this wasn't a random meeting. This was an execution. Mr. Sullivan, you are not on the agenda. I'm here to present information about fire safety code violations, contractor fraud, and the false fire report filed in connection with the incident that nearly killed my daughter. I walked toward the front of the room, every eye following me. I'm also here to present evidence of embezzlement, insurance fraud, and criminal conspiracy. I believe the community has a right to know what's been done in their name by someone who had no legal authority to do any of it. Janet Rodriguez stood up. For the record, I'm Senior Fire Marshal Janet Rodriguez with the Arizona Fire Marshal's Office. I'm here in official capacity regarding the criminal investigation into false fire reporting. Sarah Chen stood next. Deputy County Attorney Sarah Chen. I'm here observing as the County Attorney's Office has opened multiple investigations into HOA-related fraud at this community. Patricia Drummond's face went from red to white to gray, the color of ash after everything's burned away. This meeting is adjourned. Actually, I said, connecting my laptop to the projector Robert had set up, This meeting is just getting started, because the clipboard queen has been lying to you for years, and tonight you're all going to see exactly what she's been hiding. My first slide appeared on the screen, burn pattern analysis from the Lakeside Meadows fire, comparing Patricia's false statements to the actual evidence. Let me tell you about the night your HOA president tried to murder my daughter and blame me for the fire her corruption caused. The first slide showed two side-by-side images, Patricia's initial incident statement claiming fire origin in my unit, and the actual burn pattern analysis proving it started in the storage facility. This is a V-pattern char mark on the storage facility exterior wall, I said, laser pointer highlighting the evidence. The deepest char is at the electrical panel, the point of origin. The fire spread outward from there, exactly as basic fire investigation science predicts. My unit was damaged by fire spreading from the storage facility, not to it. I advanced to the next slide. This is the fire marshal's report filed under Senior Fire Marshal Janet Rodriguez's credentials, claiming my air filtration system caused the fire and killed my daughter Emma. Janet stood. I didn't write that report. I was in San Diego at a training conference when this fire occurred. Someone filed false documentation using my name and credentials. That's a felony. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Patricia started to speak, but I cut her off. Here's Patricia Drummond's initial incident statement, filed while I was in the emergency room with my daughter. I projected the document. Quote, fire originated in Unit C due to unauthorized HVAC modifications. Resident Emma Sullivan, age 8, confirmed deceased at scene. Both statements are provably false. I showed photos of Emma from this morning, alive in her hospital bed. My daughter isn't dead. She's in Phoenix Children's Hospital ICU, recovering from smoke inhalation caused by a fire that started because the board chair ignored code violations I warned her about 6 weeks before the incident. Rosa Martinez stood up. I warned her too, about the storage facility electrical panel. She told me to stop creating problems. Frank Kowalski rose. I reported the blocked fire exits 3 months ago. Patricia said addressing them would be unsightly and refused to authorize repairs. One by one, the families stood, each one with a story of ignored safety warnings, denied accommodations, illegal fines, the room filled with voices that had been silenced by fear for years. I advanced to the next slide, contractor license database. The storage facility electrical work was performed by Miguel Santos. His license expired in 2019. He's been working illegally for 4 years with Patricia's full knowledge and approval. That's a lie, the enforcer finally found her voice. I had no idea his license. I have the emails. Robert Chen stood, pulling documents from his folder. You wrote, and I quote, Miguel charges half what licensed contractors cost and doesn't ask questions about permits. Use him for all electrical work going forward. That's from your personal email to your sister, who forwarded it to Miguel. It's dated March 2020, a full year after his license expired. Patricia's face went from white to crimson. Those are private communications. You have no right. They were subpoenaed by the county attorney's office as part of the fraud investigation, Sarah Chen said, standing. Ms. Drummond, everything being presented here is part of an ongoing criminal investigation. You have the right to remain silent, and I suggest you exercise it. I wasn't done. I advanced to financial records. Patricia received $32,000 in kickbacks from Miguel Santos over 4 years, paid through a shell company called Desert Property Consulting. That's embezzlement of HOA funds and contractor fraud. The room erupted in outrage, homeowners shouting, demanding answers. The clipboard queen tried to speak, tried to regain control, but the dam had broken. The HOA also misrepresented fire safety compliance to our insurance carrier to get lower premiums. I continued over the noise. That's insurance fraud. Patricia knew about code violations but hid them from the insurer because fixing them would cost money and make the community less attractive. I advanced to the final slide, the county and corporation records showing the 7-year gap. And Robert was right. The HOA hasn't been properly registered since 2017. Every fine you've paid for 6 years was illegal. Every lien was void. Every threat was made by an entity with no legal authority to make it. I want my money back, someone shouted from the middle of the room. We all do, another voice agreed. How much did she steal from us? The questions came like machine gun fire, angry and righteous and long overdue. Patricia Drummond stood, her composure finally cracking completely. This is a witch hunt. David Sullivan is a disgruntled homeowner who refused to follow the rules, and now he's fabricating. I'm not fabricating anything. My voice cut through the chaos, cold and precise. I'm a fire safety engineer with 15 years of investigation experience. Everything I've presented is documented, verified, and currently under criminal investigation by multiple agencies. You filed a false fire report that declared my living daughter dead. You embezzled HOA funds. You hired unlicensed contractors. You ignored safety violations that nearly killed a child. And you did all of it while operating an organization that hasn't legally existed for 6 years. Sarah Chen moved toward the front of the room, a uniformed officer appearing at the door behind her. Patricia Drummond, Sarah said formally. The county attorney's office is filing charges of filing a false instrument, insurance fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit contractor fraud. You're not under arrest at this moment, but you will be served with a criminal complaint within 48 hours. I strongly suggest you retain legal counsel. The board chair looked around the room, at the families she'd terrorized, at the board members backing away from her, at the officials who'd finally come for her. She looked at me last, and I saw the moment she understood. She'd tried to erase me. Instead, I'd erased her. "This meeting is adjourned," the tyrant whispered, her voice breaking. "Actually," Robert Chen said quietly, "I move to remove Patricia Drummond as board president, effective immediately, due to criminal conduct and breach of fiduciary duty." "Seconded," said another board member instantly. "All in favor?" Every hand went up except Patricia's. Motion carries. Robert looked at the woman who'd threatened his livelihood for 2 years. "You're done, Patricia. Get out." She left without another word, walking through a room full of people she'd spent years destroying, their eyes following her every step. The tyrant's reign ended not with fire or fury, but with the quiet click of a door closing behind her, and me standing in front of the community she'd terrorized, holding evidence of every crime she'd committed, watching justice finally arrive. Patricia Drummond was arrested 48 hours later on multiple felony charges: filing false fire reports, insurance fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit contractor fraud. The Arizona Republic ran Lisa Chen's story on the front page. HOA president's fraud nearly kills child, declares her legally dead to seize property. The story went viral. National news picked it up. HOA reform advocates used it as a rallying cry. And in living rooms across America, people read about a father who'd refused to let a tyrant erase his daughter's existence. The bureaucratic nightmare reversed faster than it had been created. Emma's insurance coverage was reinstated with an apology from the company. The hospital upgraded her care and waived the portion of bills accumulated during her legally dead period. My property seizure order was voided. The court ruled the HOA lacked standing to file it in the first place. Within a week, the HOA underwent emergency reincorporation with full financial transparency. The audit revealed Patricia had embezzled over $200,000 over 6 years through contractor kickbacks, inflated maintenance contracts, and phantom consulting fees. Every family who'd paid illegal fines since 2017 received full refunds plus interest. Frank and Martha Kowalski got their $18,000 back. Rosa Martinez received her money and a formal apology. 12 families total, over $400,000 returned to people who'd been robbed by someone operating a ghost organization. Robert Chen became interim board president. His first act was implementing comprehensive fire safety inspections throughout the community, with me hired as the paid consultant. His second was creating accommodation policies that prioritized medical necessity over aesthetics. His third was establishing financial oversight, requiring 3 board members to approve any expenditure over $500. Miguel Santos, the unlicensed contractor, testified against the board chair in exchange for reduced charges. He confirmed the kickback scheme, admitted his electrical work caused the storage facility fire, and provided documentation of every building code violation Patricia had ordered him to ignore or hide. The trial was scheduled for 8 months out, but Patricia's attorney was already negotiating a plea deal. The evidence was overwhelming. She was facing 15 to 20 years, but the real change happened in smaller ways. The Martinez family hosted a community barbecue where people met neighbors they'd been too afraid to talk to under the enforcer's reign. The Hendersons organized a playground renovation, installing sensory-friendly equipment for children with autism. Frank Kowalski started a community safety committee that conducted monthly inspections and reported violations immediately to code enforcement, not the HOA. People stopped living in fear, started talking to each other, built the actual community Patricia had pretended to protect while systematically destroying it. 3 months after the confrontation, Emma came home from the hospital, not to our fire-damaged unit, but to a ground-floor townhouse the HOA board offered us at no additional cost while our original home was being properly repaired, with licensed contractors, proper permits, and Robert personally overseeing every detail. The community volunteered to restore Emma's bedroom mural. 15 neighbors showed up on a Saturday morning with paintbrushes and Sarah's photograph as reference. They recreated the rainbow, the clouds, the words, "Mommy's promise, you're safe here," exactly as my wife had painted them 8 years ago. Emma stood in her new room, oxygen cannula still in place, but breathing easier every day, and traced her fingers over the restored promise. "Daddy, did Mommy know this would happen? That bad people would try to hurt us?" "I don't know, sweetheart. I think she did." Emma looked up at me with Sarah's eyes, determined, unafraid, certain. "I think that's why she made you promise to keep me safe, because she knew you'd fight for me no matter what." I pulled my daughter close, careful of her still healing lungs, and understood that Sarah's deathbed promise hadn't been about preventing harm. It had been about facing it head on, refusing to surrender, protecting what matters most, even when systems fail and bullies weaponize authority. 6 months later, I stood in front of the community center, presenting fire safety training to 70 homeowners who'd learned the hard way what happens when safety takes a back seat to aesthetics. As I taught them to read fire codes and recognize violations, I saw Emma sitting in the front row with Robert's daughter Sophia, both girls coloring in workbooks about fire prevention. The clipboard queen was in prison awaiting trial. The community she'd terrorized was thriving, and my daughter, the girl the state had declared dead, the child a corrupt HOA president had tried to erase, was alive, breathing, surrounded by neighbors who'd learned to choose protection over perfection. Sometimes justice takes time. Sometimes it requires fighting systems designed to protect the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. Sometimes you have to burn down an empire of lies to build something honest in its place. I kept my promise to Sarah. I kept Emma safe. Not by avoiding the fight, but by understanding that real safety comes from holding people accountable, exposing corruption, and refusing to let fear win. If you've ever felt trapped by someone abusing their authority, remember this: they're only powerful as long as you're isolated. The moment you find your voice, gather your evidence, and stand up with others who've been hurt, that's when their empire starts to crumble. Patricia Drummond thought she could erase my family. Instead, she erased herself. And Emma's still breathing, still fighting, still here. That's the only victory that matters. If this story gave you hope or reminded you that fighting back is possible, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you've ever faced down someone who thought they were untouchable. Sometimes knowing you're not alone is the first step toward finding your courage. And sometimes that courage changes everything.